Alright, the Brandt Gate Destined One is here, so let's begin, this time for the Impauldio ride line. Here's the starter, Falstista, looks pretty cool honestly. Here's the grade 1 Wakey Power, Impauldio, which has the skill Auto when placed by riding on top of the grade 0, cost reveal a grade 3 Impauldio from your ride deck and put a system code Exceed token into your order zone. And yes, this is basically the order card for the deck. The second time in fact that we do not have a set order in the main deck, but rather as a token. In which before we continue, we go to System Code Exceed, which is a grade 1 set order token. So remember, it doesn't go in the main deck. And the skill is Count Order Zone. You cannot ride grade 3 or greater cards without Impauldio in their name. And you get self-modification gauges. In which the main skills are Auto Order Zone. When put into the damage zone during your opponent's turn, choose a card from your drop zone and put it face up as a self-modification gauge. Then, if you have 3 or less self-modification gauges, and if you did not get a trigger from your damage check this turn, choose one of your Vanguards that gets plus 5k power into the end turn. But if you have 4 or more self-modification changes, choose one of your Vanguards plus 5k power. So basically, if you have at least 3 and you did not get a trigger, you basically get a half trigger power for the turn. But if you have 4, you get the extra 5k power regardless. So it's just pretty nice that you can basically get a 10k buff overall, and it's just defensive value right here. But of course, there's also more for the self-modification gauges. So basically, the more pain you get, the stronger you're going to get modified, which will be explained with the further cards. In which we go to Impauldio, which is the grade 2 with 10k power and skills. Auto when rolled upon by your at least grade 3 Impauldio, put the top card of your deck as a self-modification gauge. Then choose a self-modification gauge and put it to your hand. Since you're going to be doing random damage checks with self-modification gauges, it's just nice that you can get some of the cards back. It's just too bad that this is the only card that does it, and it's on a ride line. In which we go to the grade 3 with 13 power, Destined One of Exceedance Impauldio, which has the skill Act Vanguard once per turn, cost counterblast 1. Choose a card from your draw zone and put it as a self-modification gauge. And then look at top 5 cards of the deck to choose up to 1 grade 3 or less card from among them, call it to rear guard, and shuffle your deck. And of course, this card gets this ability, Count Vanguard. All your front row units get plus 5k power for every 2 self-modification gauges. Since your grade 2 and grade 3 already gives you 1, you will have at least 2. From your extra damage check, you might get another 1 or 2. So that extra 5k power is pretty guaranteed already. But the second skill is the Divine skill, where Act Vanguard. If your opponent's Vanguard is at least grade 3 while you have 4 more self-modification gauges, cost counterblast 1, discard a card from hand, plus 1 crit, drive plus 2. Once again, Destined One Divine skills being not too crazy, but I don't really mind it. This is overall not too bad, being a basically pressure card. And considering that this is designed for a character that is about surpassing with strength, I kind of get the idea. But overall, this is not too bad. The first skill is just basically extra more self-modification, and you're guaranteed at least 2. You'll probably have 3 or 4 in the first grade 3 turn anyway. And by the time you're able to activate the Divine skill, it's basically some extra pressure right there. And I kind of like it. Also, design-wise, it looks basically like Nova Grappler plus Messiah together. So I am a bit debating whether I should build the deck or not, because I kind of like the self-modification idea here because it can play defensive as well. And now to the support, Spacewalk Dragon, which is a grade 1 with K power and the skills. Auto rearguard at the end of this unit boosts if you have 2 or more self-modification gauges. Put this to soul and then choose one of your opponent's grade 1 or less rearguards and retire it. It can be decent for small snipes, but I think there might be better options than this. And then we go to Gather 2-2, which is a grade 1 with K power and the skills. Count rearguard during turn. You have 4 or more self-modification gauges plus 10k. You have better options than this, so I don't think you're going to run this at all. And then we go to Nebula Invoke Dragon, which is grade 2 with 10k power and the skills. Auto rearguard when this card attacks, costs Soul Blast 1. This unit gets plus 5k power in the end of battle, but you have 5 or more self-modification gauges, 15k instead. Overall, not too bad, especially for the second skill added, where Count Guardian, you have 4 or more self-modification gauges plus 15k shield. Overall, pretty good beater and basically defensive card, and I like that. And combining that with your self-modification gauges from your order card, the shield value might be significant. And finally, Flight Transformation Windsor, which is a grade 3 with 13 power and the skills. Count rearguard during a turn. You have 2 or more self-modification gauges. This card gets plus 5k power. If you have at least 8, drive cannot be decreased by this card's ability, which is basically for its next skill, where auto rearguard when this card attacks, you have 4 or more self-modification gauges, and you've done no drive checks for a rearguard attack this turn. Cost counterblast 1. Until the end of the battle, this unit gets drive check and then drive -1. And at the end of the battle, bind this unit. This is just overall pretty good because it's another pressure card, this time on a rear guard with drive checks. It already gets extra power, and if you have 8, it doesn't lose its drive checks at all. Of course, 8 might be a little tough to achieve because on your first grade 3 ride, you will usually have 3 or 4 by estimate count. and by the time you hit 8, you might have 5 damage as well. So the lose no drive check part might be a little difficult, but that is actually the point of the deck, because basically the more pain you get, the stronger you're going to get. And just overall pretty good. It's just basically another rear guard pressure card, combining that with your Vanguard that already gets 4 drive check with the Divine skill. So imagine this card with full power at the rear guard with extra 2 drive checks. And finally, next week we got the Night Rose cards, not the Strides. So that's it for the new Impauldio ride line. What do you guys think of it? Overall, I kind of like the concept. Design wise, I'm actually pretty cool with it, although not as cool as many other ride lines, so I am still debating whether I should build the deck or not. But I really like the self-modification here, especially on the idea where the more pain you get, the stronger you get. And I also like the defensive playstyle with it on top of it, with the offense. But overall, pretty cool. But on that, that's for this, and see you all next time.